there are still a lot of different options here. And so there is some mixing and matching and kind of figuring out who do you keep, who do you trade, who you let go in free agency. This is going to be interesting the next couple of years.
We've been talking about this Orioles farm system a lot over the last few years. There is still top tier talent that could make its way to the big leagues shortly. The next name to know, Samuel Basallo. Let's talk about him now. It's a BA prospect profile. Baseball America puts Basallo as the number one prospect in the organization right now. JJ, what are we thinking for him in terms of what he could bring to the mix as a big leaguer someday?
The real question is how soon is Sunday? I think as a hitter, Samuel Basallo could help in 2025. He's a catcher. They kind of have one of those in Adley Rutschman. So seeing where Basallo is going to fit in the short to medium term is kind of a more interesting question there. But hey, I would much rather have a catcher who can mash like this. And if you have to, he can play DH, he could play first base, maybe even play a corner outfield spot if you're trying to find a spot for him. I would much rather have that than to say, oh, he can catch, but we don't know how much he's going to hit. So really, if he can't catch, if he's not a catcher, not an everyday catcher, there's not a whole lot of value here. Basallo, he's already created, jaws are dropping in spring training because he puts on a show in BP. He has massive power, and this is someone whose best days are still far, far ahead of him. The question we'll see in 2025 is, it's not that he can't catch. The question is when will the catching be ready? And then again, will it be a level high enough to where you're splitting time with Adley Rutschman? Again, catchers nowadays don't play 145 games, but you're going to have to probably with Basallo, as long as Rutschman's there, figure out some other places for him to get further at bats, because this is the prospect who, when he reaches the majors, you don't want him sitting on the bench 2 out of 3 games. You want to figure out ways, Geoff, to get him in the lineup much more often than that.
Yeah, and I think, you look at this bat, you look at how advanced it is for how young he is, and at the levels that he's played against, the level of competition has always been like 3 to 4 years higher, it seems like. Absolutely mashes. There is some swing and miss in the profile. The swing decisions can get better, but they're sort of like at that fringy range where with the power, with the output he has, when you factor in how young he is, and what the production has been, you're a little bit less concerned. I feel like all those numbers will sort of tick up over time. But this is a hitter that had a 106.5 mile per hour, 90th percentile last year. As a 20-year-old, left-handed power is always in high demand. Hit a ball 115 in terms of his max EV. Can hit for power. He is a hitter as well. I think you sort of look at the bat to ball ability. Yeah, there is some swing and miss, but it's mitigated by enough swing decisions and sort of just really attacking strikes that are in the zone. He's not passive at all in that regard. So I think there's a lot of stuff that you look at with Basallo just from a hitting perspective and can project him out at a variety of positions, whether that's sort of, filling a DH catcher first base sort of role. Early on, we'll see if there's an injury at some point, we might see him. The catcher defense, though, this isn't like a Josue Briseño where, you talk to every scout and it's like immediately like he's not a catcher. It's not one of those kind of conversations. He has a big arm, does receive okay. I think just, it takes a while to learn that position as a professional. He's still super young and has been playing with more advanced competition. So maybe some of those, shortcomings are a little bit more exposed or out there a little bit more. But I think just overall, this is one of the more exciting hitting prospects in the game.
I do want to emphasize that youth. We're talking about a catcher who will not turn 21 until August of this year. He reached AAA last year. We're talking about whether he could help them at the big league club this year. And I'll remind you, he's a catcher. Catchers often take longer. They take longer to develop just because there's so much involved in it. There's so much work involved, and catchers wear down. Samuel Basallo, to his credit, doesn't really seem to wear down. This is the thing that stands out about this is that these are the kind of problems that often resolve themselves in that they end up being useful problems in the short term. What I love about this Orioles team, there are things to be concerned about with the pitching staff and whether they have enough frontline starters and all that. But when you look at this lineup, the key thing that they have that maybe some other teams in their division don't have as much, especially the Yankees, I would say, is these kind of backup plans where Adley Rutschman is obviously vital to the Orioles. He's been vital to them. His struggles in the second half of last year really hurt the offense. expect him to be back this year like normal. But if he gets hurt and you say, well, what's plan B? Samuel Basallo could be a really good plan B. Most teams don't have a plan B like that. Okay, well, let's talk about at first base where you got a Ryan Mountcastle. You've got multiple first basemen. You got Kobe Mayo who could be a backup plan there. Basallo could also be a backup plan. Mayo could be a backup plan at third. You have Gunnar Henderson at short, but Jackson Holiday could slide over, or Jordan Westbrook could slide over, and you put Kobe Mayo at third. This is the team. You look at the outfield; they got about 5-6 outfielders who are all kind of fitting into that mix. This is a team that has a lot of depth, and that's something that'll probably serve you well over a 162 game season.
All right, so I'll take what JJ's saying to the next level. We're in 2025. We're going to watch the Orioles here and see how this season plays out. There is still that young talent we're talking about, like Basallo, like Kobe Mayo, who we've talked about plenty on Baseball America Hot Sheet. Jeff, what do you think the alignment is like? You don't have to necessarily tell me the lineup 1 through 9, but what is the alignment for the Orioles in 2026 in a perfect world for them, not including what they would do in free agency?
Yeah, and I think you sort of look at the lineup itself, the positional side of things. There's not a lot of uncertainty necessarily. There's still sort of like too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, where there's just too many guys out there. Tyler O'Neill is going to be back again next year. They will be without Cedric Mullins, which could open up a spot in the outfield. Ryan Mountcastle, I've said this for a year now. I feel like he's a prime sort of trade candidate at some point because they have Basallo and some other options that could potentially fill that DH or first base role. They do have Ryan O'Hearn, I believe. Actually, no, he's a free agent after next year too. So first base kind of does open up. So I think we sort of look at Basallo. I think there's an opportunity there for him to sort of slide into that first base role. We know Gunnar Henderson is under contract for a long time, Jordan Westberg, Colton Cowser, Jackson Holiday. But I do sort of think that when you look at how first base sets up, if Mountcastle, maybe does get moved, there's an opportunity potentially in 2026, especially when we consider that Basallo is, already in AAA and is going to spend the majority of the year there this year and probably does see at least a cup of coffee in September, if not more. So I think that's probably where the spot is that Basallo slides into, just based on all those other infield spots sort of being full, catcher obviously being full, and none of those guys all under contract through I think at least 2027 and beyond.
The other interesting thing you just noted there is that first base is kind of the position that might open up. And I would say, as you said, center field with Cedric Mullins. Is that going to be Enrique Bradfield? Is that going to be maybe a little quick, but is that going to be Vance Honeycutt? Is that going to be sliding Colton Cowser back over? They have again, this is the thing with the Orioles. The farm system depth is not what it was a few years ago. It's never going to be that again, probably for quite a long while, because that was one of the better farm systems we're ever going to see. But there are still a lot of different options here. And so there is some mixing and matching and kind of figure out who do you keep, who do you trade, who you let go in free agency. This is going to be interesting the next couple of years.
It is, and it's a tough division too. So you've got to think about the future, but they're also in their winning window right now, and they have not signed any of their young stars to extensions. They're getting pricey, and some of them have agency representation that might say no regardless. So throwing that all out there, they're in a great spot, but it doesn't mean it comes without pressure for Mike Elias, leader of the front office there. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you want to learn more about top prospects per team, go for it. We have most of them up already on the Baseball America YouTube channel.